In progress.
Good evening and welcome to the Contra Costa Transportation Authority meeting of May 15th, 2024. And it is 6 o'clock, and we will call this meeting to order. And if you will please pay attention to this short video. Terry Ann?
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Well said. Thank you, Terry Ann. And the next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and if you're listening online, please mute your mic. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now, Terry Ann, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Carlson.
Here.
Commissioner Alternative Xavier for Commissioner Fideli.
Here.
Commissioner Haskew.
Here.
Commissioner Kelly.
Here.
Commissioner Meadows.
Here.
Commissioner / Representative Nowak.
Here.
Commissioner Perkins.
Here.
Commissioner Sauce.
Here.
Chair Arnrich.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum. We have members, Commissioner / Representative Glover, Vice Chair Hernandez-Thorpe, and Representative Foley, and Peoples absent.
Great. Thank you, Terry Ann. This takes us to the next item on our agenda, and it's an opportunity for public comment on anything that's not on our agenda. We will actually call for public comment on each agenda item as we come up. And Terry Ann, do we have any written or online comments at this time?
We do have a public comment from Bruce Olson.
Bruce, welcome. A beautiful night to ride your bike, too.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Is this mic
Yes.
working? Okay, thank you. I am Bruce Olson, East County's Mr. Bicycle. I rode my bicycle to the meeting tonight. It was 17 and a half beautiful miles, except for the headwind. But this is Contra Costa County, so we got to expect a little something. So Regional Measure 3, which is the incremental raising of automobile tolls over the 7 Bay Area bridges, is coming up with about $16 million worth of bicycle ped projects for Contra Costa County available in the next year. So we have time to make our application. As many of you know, the Delta de Anza Regional Trail, which is built and operated and maintained by the East Bay Regional Park District, starts in eastern Oakley, extends through Antioch, Bay Point, Pittsburgh, and ends at the Highway 4 interchange of Willow Pass Road. There, the bicyclist is faced with 2 unacceptable alternatives. He or she can either ride down Willow Pass Road into central Concord and have to cross the Suicide Bridge, or Caltrans agrees with us that it's a suicide bridge and they say you can ride your bicycle on the shoulder of the freeway to the next ramp, which is Port Chicago Highway, which is about 1.5 miles. I rode my bicycle on that segment of freeway tonight. Fortunately, I was not breezed, technical term here among the bicyclists, an intentional close pass by a motorist we call a breeze. Many times on the freeway, motorists want to, how shall I say this with tact?
Breeze you.
Emphasize their ownership of the freeway, and just about everybody understands that bicycles are not allowed on freeways except in certain special instances. So I am requesting tonight that the CCTA work in conjunction with East Bay Regional Park District and apply for some of this money and build the next segment of the Delta de Anza Regional Trail to get the bicyclists off the shoulder of the freeway. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing that. Well done. All right, is there anybody else here, either online or in the room, who would like to make public comment? Seeing,
No further public comment.
okay, thank you, Terry. This will take us to the next item, item number 4, and it's our consent calendar, which we also have the approval of the minutes, which we can do in one motion. These are considered routine, and/or we have seen these in subcommittees and reviewed those. Is there, first I'll go to public, is there anybody in the public who would like to pull any of these items or make public comment on either the consent calendar minutes or our action items that are under consent? Terry Ann, do we have any?
No written or verbal public comment.
Is there anybody here in the room who would like to make live comments? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Move to approve.
Thank you. It's been moved by Luella, seconded by Renata. Is there any further discussion? By the way, tonight we were balanced. We usually have women on this side. We now are blessed with Rita. Rita, welcome. Thank you for being here. So, well, but not always. No, I'm kidding. Never mind. Okay, see, you did it again. Yes, thank you, Ken. So am I. And I am sitting right here. I can hear you. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Terry Ann, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Carlson?
Aye.
Commissioner Haskew?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce?
Yes.
Commissioner Xavier?
Aye.
Chair Arnrich?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Glover and Vice Chair Hernandez-Thorpe absent.
Great, thank you. All right, this will take us to our regular agenda items, starting off with number 8A, and this is under Administration and Projects Committee. First one is the update on External Affairs Department, Strategic Communications Roadmap, and turn it over to, there she is, Lindy. I got my wrong glasses on. Lindy, welcome.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Good afternoon.
Yeah,
Good
there we
evening.
go.
What time is it? Pleasure to be here with you, Chair and Commissioners. Glad that you can hear me now. I'm here to provide an update on the Department of External Affairs. This is not meant to be a full update on all of the activities that fall under the Department of External Affairs, but more of an overview, an update on the Communications Roadmap. The Communications Roadmap was actually approved in 2021, and so we're going to go over some of the intention of that roadmap and some additions I hope to provide. So the roadmap, as I said, was passed in October 2021 here by the board. The goals were to develop a sense of ownership over CCTA projects, to connect the current work of the agency with what's happening in people's lives, and to establish mechanisms for sustained public involvement. And through that, there was a series of different activities that were outlined. And I'm going to go through some of the strides that we've made in those different areas since the passage in 2021. During that time, it was sort of identified that there were 5 different audiences that were a priority for CCTA, and the intention of the roadmap was really to elevate the general public and the media, really help to get the name, CCTA's name out there, and to better connect with our constituency and the residents of Contra Costa County. Today, I'd like to sort of further elevate that stakeholder group portion, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the activities that I propose to do that. But I think that it's incredibly important that we really do continue to connect with stakeholder groups and to really better understand some of their priorities as advocates and also their priorities just as members of the public, because they tend to provide us with a lot of insight and can also help us to further our goals in providing communications throughout the community. So some of the priorities of the roadmap are kind of outlined here in the rest of my presentation. We start with community engagement. So since 2022, which is when we really dove into the roadmap itself, we've launched the community event series. We've updated our About Us video. We've created a whole suite of materials, many of which are actually distributed as part of the community event series, including those pop-up banners you can see there in that picture. We've hosted a handful of events, such as the McColney Overcrossing ribbon cutting and groundbreaking events. And we've launched the On the Patio podcast, which Tim hosts, and hopefully many of you have the chance to listen to. So these are different efforts that we've made to really engage with the public and to be out and in the public in ways that we hadn't been before. I do think it's been successful in helping to elevate CCTA and giving folks a little bit of a sense of what we do, but I think there's also more work to be done. We also prioritized media relations, and since October of 2023, which is the period of time I've been here to be able to track this, we've generated media valued at more than 200,000, and that number is actually now more than 1 million thanks to the Redefining Mobility Summit. So we saw a large media turnout for the Redefining Mobility Summit and actually saw more than $900,000 in value for the media coverage that that event garnered. So this is really great and I think a big success, and there's more to be done. So we've continued to really up our public relations knowledge, working with great folks, including Luna Salazar, who held this position during the interim, who was really someone who had a lot of media expertise and helped us to kind of further the work in that regard. Since June of 2023, we've also gained a good amount of followers on our social media, which was a big priority of this roadmap. We've seen more than 579 new followers, and we've posted more than 500 times. So part of this has been really re-engaging with Facebook. CCTA wasn't a big presence on Facebook and has made a big effort to kind of be more active in that space. Also on LinkedIn, particularly through events like the Redefining Mobility Summit, we're able to connect with a lot of industry experts, which helps us to connect to members of our community who are also interested in those spaces. So this has been great, and I also think that we have kind of more effort we can put in here and more things that we'll see over the next period of the roadmap. Website maintenance and improvements is also a priority of the roadmap, and we've done a lot in that space, including updating our homepage. Our homepage has been fully updated during 2024, actually. I was going to say in the last year, but it's even shorter than that. We also added a community input hub, which is a place to hold all of our surveys, for folks to really see all of the community input activities that we are involved in, and to engage with the agency or the authority in kind of a one-stop shop, which I think is helpful. It also holds a lot of visuals. It's a little bit more of an inviting space than maybe some of our more technical elements of the website. And we can hope to continue to kind of grow this area. One of the things that we added in the last few months was that Invite CCTA to Your Event button. And we've also done some print materials related to requesting a speaker. Again, as we are more and more interested in engaging with stakeholder groups, it's important for us to put ourselves out there as a potential speaker for groups like the Rotary or Elks Lodges or folks who bring in speakers. This is an opportunity for them to invite us to their community groups. And then this was actually not identified in the communications roadmap initially, but I wanted to include it in this presentation because a lot of the work of the Department of External Affairs does have to do with technical outreach. And that technical outreach is another way that we reach the public, that we engage with the public, and gives us another opportunity to share with them not just the work that we're doing, but also the expertise of our incredible staff. An example of this is the recent Vehicle Miles Traveled video that we produced. It's gotten more than 1,000 views on YouTube, which is really great, and shows an interest in that topic area, and also gives us the opportunity to help the public understand some of the kind of complex issues that we're dealing with as transportation continues to innovate and evolve. So these are also opportunities for us to work with each other and to work with the public, and to show CCTA's kind of expertise in this area. So the roadmap, we really have done work from 2022 through 2023, and now we're sort of right in this spot between 2024 and 2025, which brings us to this presentation and an opportunity to talk about where do we go from here. As you just saw, we've done a lot over the last few years, and there's definitely been strides made in the initiatives that were undertaken through the roadmap. But I think there's also some things I'd like to add, and I wanted to go through those and get your feedback today. So I had the pleasure as the new Director of External Affairs to have meetings with almost all of you, and I appreciate you taking that time to provide that kind of one-on-one feedback. I thought it would be helpful to summarize that feedback here. During those meetings, I heard from a lot of you about CCTA's brand, and one thing I would like to add to the roadmap is an update of that brand and a real evaluation of the brand assets. I think it's really interesting to think about cohesion and the many different brands that sort of fall under the CCTA umbrella, and I think it's important that we do our best to sort of bring those into kind of one noticeable and knowable brand here in our community. Also deploying a database system to assist in relationship management and tracking contacts. Currently, we do have a pretty robust system for sending out emails, but that's the only information we can gather. And a customer relationship system or relationship management system of some kind would really make it easier for us to engage with stakeholder groups, to make connections between contacts, for us to take notes and kind of be able to share with each other throughout staff what kind of relationships we've developed. And also to group people by things like city, for example, if we wanted to send something out just to the city of Danville or just to the city of Pleasant Hill. A system like this would help us do that. I'd also like to talk about producing a shareable publication, such as an e-newsletter for CCTA, something that folks like you all could share with your community. It could be helpful perhaps in having talking points for your city council meetings, which was something that came up in some of our one-on-one meetings, but also something we could share with the public in case they're looking for a summary of what we've been up to. It's also a great way to share some of the very cool visuals that we have here at CCTA. Lastly, I'd like to increase CCTA's digital footprint through digital marketing. We've done a little bit of this. I don't know if any of you have seen our VMT video pop up on your Facebook, but if you did, it's likely because it was boosted. We did a little bit of digital marketing for that video. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to explore digital marketing and kind of see what works best for us as an agency, but it's definitely something worth embarking on, especially as we think about our countywide transportation plan and really look to elicit feedback and get folks' perspectives as we think about the future of transportation here in Contra Costa County. I also want to talk again about those stakeholder groups and just really highlighting some of the groups we hope to engage more with over the remainder of this roadmap, which again goes through the end of 2025. Two groups I think are worth targeting are our senior population, who could really help us to think about planning and engage with us as we plan, again, for this larger future in Contra Costa County, of which they will continue to be our highest growing population. And it's very important, I think, to engage with them. Rashida on our team is doing a lot of great work in accessibility, and I think it's really important that they feel a part of that. And also students through strategic focused initiatives, including things that could provide feedback loop, right? Things like essay contests and summer camps where our students can really take a certain ownership of CCTA and see themselves in the vision that is produced by us as an agency. Could also include opportunities for earn and learn, for internships, webinars about transportation careers, really helping us be a resource in our community for kids who are interested in this space, particularly areas like civil engineering and technology. That is the conclusion of my presentation. I also just want to reiterate my gratitude for you all taking the time to meet with me and helping me to kind of understand what you all see as a vision for communication and update this roadmap accordingly. So thank you. I'm available for questions.
Lindy, thank you so much. Thank you for your enthusiasm and your absolute positive outlook. And I just make one quick comment before we open it up to everybody else. The whole idea of rebranding us is important. Lindy did this wonderful exercise. I was with Tim, I don't even remember where we were. She threw out all of the agencies across the United States, all of their logos. We never could find ours. It didn't stand out. We picked out about 5, and they were really good. So I look forward to that. So time for questions, comments, or anything? Chris, and then Sue?
Lindy, thank you. Wonderful presentation, as always. And I want to echo what Newell says in terms of the branding. We have so many different brands, but they're not held together. And so I know you and I have talked about that. I look forward to finding something that brings everything together under the CCTA umbrella. I think it's really, really important. And I really appreciate your reaching out on Facebook. I know a lot of my residents take a look at that. I like the idea of an e-newsletter. That would be helpful for me. Reaching out to the seniors and the students, whether it's travel, training, or contests, just reaching our public. And I think you're making just a great strides in that. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Sue?
So I'll ditto their comments, but I think the one thing that I found that I heard from other people was the VMT. It was a really, a lot of people talk about it when we talk about VMT when we're discussing, developments within our cities and things like that, and people always looking cross-eyed when we talk about it. And I think, like, educating the public on some of this stuff is super important, and I think it gives CCTA a real place in the community by helping to educate the community on those topics. Doesn't even have to be related to our projects, but VMT is related to projects we have in our cities, not only. And so things like that, I think, will draw more attention to your posts and your social media. So I just would encourage, you can think of more of stuff like that. I think that would be great. A couple of people came up to me and said, I had no idea what VMT was until I saw it on Facebook. And I'm like,
That's really great to hear.
so, it like rang a bell. Somebody's like, oh, somebody's finally going to explain this to me. And
That's wonderful. And I have to
think
say,
that's great.
Stephanie and Matt, who are here, were hugely instrumental in us executing that. So they lended their expertise, and I just want to say thank you because it came out really great.
Well done. Any other comments, questions? Ken?
I'll say ditto. But also,
Ditto.
no, I think the rebranding is really, really important, but I also just, if I were to prioritize them, it would be, let's rebrand and let's get that e-newsletter out, because that'll drive, I think, a lot of our digital opportunities. And the more you do that, then the more we can drive the education side of it too, of, because we're constantly getting asked is, why aren't there more buses, or why aren't there more traffic lanes, or, to any way we can increase our presence to educate people and drive them to our digital presence. I get numerous comments about my e-blast, and that just reaches, that smaller population, but it is, with everything we're all doing here, the more we're doing that and sharing what CCTA is doing through sharing the e-blast, I think we make great strides. So if I were to prioritize, those are my two.
Thank you, Ken. Nobody else? Oh, sorry, Renata. I was looking for
That's all right.
lights.
I was late with the. Thank you, Lindy. This is really good stuff. I really like the notion of providing us with talking points and or other tools that we can use to help educate our constituents. John was just at the joint meeting of the La Miranda city councils last week. And that was just a phenomenal opportunity to really showcase some of the really good work that this authority is doing, in particular the evacuation study that is being done. So the more we can focus on things that we are doing that is directly relevant to the things that are top of mind for our constituents, which are evacuation, fire safety, traffic that is caused by new development, and with the implementation of RENA and all of our municipalities, and safety. I think the more helpful that will be.
Thank you, Renata. Any other questions, comment? We'll go to public hearing. Is there anybody here in the room who would like to make any public comment? Seeing none, Terry Ann, is there anybody online or written?
I have no written or verbal public comment.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is just an information item only, and we look forward to seeing things move forward. And we'll see you soon, Lindy. Thank you. All right, this will take us now to item number 8B, and this is our, we've been waiting for this. This is something that's actually been 3 years since we've done this, but this is our organizational assessment, and it's a study. We'll be presented with the findings on this, and presented by none other than Terry Ann. Terry Ann, welcome.
Good evening. I get to slide over to the hot seat tonight. Good evening, Authority Board Chair and Commissioners. In July 2023, we started conducting an organizational assessment. I'll refer to it as the study. The study evaluated the authority's current structure and operations with a focus on aligning them with industry best practices and future goals such as CCTA 4.0 and transportation efficiency through the Digital Road Manager, enhancing accessibility and equity, succession planning, and staff development. The study also performed a needs and gaps analysis to identify areas for improvement, which will be discussed on the next slide. It consisted of 15 interviews with the directors, key staff, and our program and project management consultant lead at Advanced Mobility Group, and also an employee survey that had an 86% response rate. The results were generally that we have a positive organizational culture with a call for improving communications, recognition for quality performance, and consultant management. The study also consisted of peer learning and best practices research from 11 comparator agencies that had similar goals and responsibilities of planning, funding, and delivering transportation projects and programs, and some operational experience. The study determined that each agency had similarities and differences that made them unique, and that the CCTA, like the others, needed to develop a unique structure that best serves its future goals. The study provided an implementation action plan with the following key recommendations to address the identified gaps, which I will talk about in future slides. They consisted of internal communications, organizational development and staffing growth, sustainable leadership, consultant management best practices, and the CCTA 4.0 strategy and staffing plan. The study recommended that internal communications be improved across departments and from the top down by establishing periodic communications from the executive director and establishment of an intranet for information sharing. Currently, I'm in the process of developing an intranet and benefits intranet for information sharing with staff and a way to build relationships and internal communications with ideas such as adding executive director blog or post from the executive director to staff and project program updates. We are also using the all-staff meetings to provide updates on projects, programs, and studies. To ensure organizational development, staffing growth, and succession planning, the study recommended that we address current vacancies promptly. We have 25 total full-time equivalent positions and have filled 24 of them since the study started last July, 3 since February. We have 1 vacancy being the Deputy Executive Director for Projects. It is also recommended that we explore opportunities to cultivate and advance career development for our staff through use of project-based teams, training, peer-to-peer coaching, mentorship, and career ladders for promotional opportunities. Adding additional classifications will allow for staff development and succession planning, as well as ensure we have the proper positions in place to support our future goals. The current organizational structure has 6 departments. Planning and projects are led by deputies when those positions are filled. The programs, external affairs, and administration departments are led by directors, and the finance department is led by a chief financial officer. Currently, 7 directors, the chief financial officer, and an engineering manager report directly to the executive director, making 9 direct reports. This slide shows the current organizational chart, which represents the current 25 full-time equivalent positions that have been approved by the authority board with 1 vacant deputy executive director for projects position. This slide is the proposed organizational chart with the 2 new proposed FTEs as shown in green, which would bring the new total to 27. For the planning department, it's recommended that 1 additional FTE be added for the deputy executive director of planning, and that it be reclassified to a Deputy Executive Director for Planning, Programs, and Policy. A current classification already exists for this position, but does not have an FTE assigned. For the External Affairs Department, it is recommended that one new classification of a communication specialist and one additional FTE be added. Currently, External Affairs is a department with one director who oversees the authority's government relations and legislative activities, public outreach, communications, and marketing. Expansion of this department would allow the director to focus on high-level community engagement, coalition building, internal communications, government relations, and legislative activities. The new position would support the strategies in the Communications Strategic Plan Roadmap and act as boots on the ground to support projects, programs, and plans in the community to garner public outreach and engagement. The two recommended FTEs will be evaluated in the total compensation study. For title reclassifications, it's recommended that programs and policy be added to the Deputy Executive Director for Planning to encompass a greater role in the development and implementation of authority-led policies, as well as overseeing the programs department. Operations is recommended to be added to the Deputy Executive Director for Projects to encompass the operations and maintenance roles under CCTA 4.0. They did evaluate an additional deputy to oversee operations and technology, but felt that CCTA was too small to support the need for 3 deputies and that the other deputy positions would be more effective. Lastly, the slide shows via the red arrow the recommended reporting structure change for programs to move under the Deputy Executive Director for Planning, Programs, and Policy, with the Director of Mobility Programs reporting to this deputy. This would streamline operational efficiency, allow for better collaboration, and align the goals for alternative modes of transportation and programs in the planning process. This slide shows the new proposed classifications. The study recommends introducing new classifications in every department except for finance to provide career ladders, address the additional workload, changing needs, succession planning, and staffing for the CCTA 4.0 initiative. With the recent additions of a finance manager and a contracts manager, the finance department has 5 classifications and 6 FTEs and is running well as staffed, and there are no proposed classifications. The planning department has primary responsibility for planning, organizing, and directing the planning activities of the authority and overseeing the growth and congestion management programs. Currently, it has 3 classifications and 3 FTEs. With the increased role in policy making, stepping more into a regulatory role, support for data analytics, and adaptation to evolving planning paradigms, there is a recommendation to add 2 new classifications of a principal transportation planner and data analyst/scientist. The principal transportation planner will be used for succession planning and career development for a senior planner and will provide higher level planning support to the deputy with identifying priorities and overseeing implementation of plans. There is no additional FTE recommended at this time. The data analyst/scientists will collect, transform, and organize data in order to draw conclusions, make predictions, and drive informed decisions. There is no additional FTE recommended at this time, and the classification would not be filled until the need arises under the Digital Road Manager role and the board approves an additional FTE. The Projects Department is responsible for successful delivery of the authority's capital improvement program, construction management, and innovative mobility programs. Currently, the Projects Department has 5 classifications and 7 FTEs with 1 vacancy in the deputy position. The creation of 3 new classifications of a Director of Operations and Technology, Operations Manager, and an Operations Technician is recommended to address future operational and maintenance needs under CCTA 4.0. The 3 new classifications would provide technical and managerial oversight and support for CCTA becoming the Digital Road Manager for Contra Costa County, handling the day-to-day operations of the 3 domains of digital asset management, digital traffic management, and digital construction. There are no recommended FTEs at this time. These classifications would not be filled until a future need arises to support the CCTA 4.0 initiative. The board has approved any additional FTEs, and a sustainable revenue stream has been identified for operations and maintenance. The Programs Department is responsible for the oversight and management of transportation demand management, ferry feasibility studies, the Integrated Transit Plan, paratransit programs, and the evolving accessibility and equity goals of the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan, including the formation and seating of a coordinated entity, which is currently under development. Currently, it has 2 classifications and 2 FTEs. The creation of one new classification of an assistant programs manager is recommended to support the new coordinated entity and growing paratransit accessibility and equity programs. There is no additional FTE recommended at this time. The classification would not be filled until the need arises and the board approves an additional FTE. The administration department is responsible for administrative, operational, and programmatic support, human resources management, management of the authority board and 9 advisory committees, with the director serving as the clerk of the board, provides management over risks, facilities, records, legal services, and compliance, and provides complex strategic support to the executive director. There is a large gap and disparity in the administration department between the director and administrative assistants to support higher-level human resource, clerk, and analytical duties. The creation of 3 new classifications of administrative services manager, deputy clerk, and administrative analyst are recommended. The administrative services manager would assist with policy development and maintenance and human resources support with recruitments, open enrollment, onboarding and offboarding, benefits enrollments and administration, wellness programs and initiatives, and employee assistance programs. 1 additional FTE for this classification will be evaluated in the total compensation study. There is no additional FTE recommended at this time. A deputy clerk would act as a backup to the clerk of the board, assisting with training, Form 700s, board and committee agenda management, public records requests, ADA policies and requests, and act as the records manager. There is no additional FTE recommended at this time. We will evaluate reclassifying an administrative assistant to a deputy clerk as part of the total compensation study. An administrative analyst will provide higher-level analytical and technical support with coding, reporting, accountability, administering and maintaining software as a service platforms, and providing a more data-intensive support role. There is no additional FTE recommended at this time. We will evaluate reclassifying an administrative assistant to an administrative analyst as part of the total compensation study. The additional classifications will support career growth, succession planning goals, ensure a balanced organizational structure, provide operational efficiency and functionality. There is funding in the budget for staff training and development and the ability to attend educational conferences. Okay, I'll now transition to the next key recommendation for developing a sustainable leadership structure. The study evaluated the makeup of the executive team and analyzed the deputy model versus a chief operating officer model to support the executive director, and recommended defining a clear and sustainable executive team that includes 2 deputy positions to ensure the proper expertise for each department. The study recommended reducing the executive director's span of control from 9 direct reports to 5, and defining the executive team. The executive team will consist of the executive director, the 2 deputy positions, the chief financial officer, and the directors for external affairs and administration. This will streamline decision-making and operational efficiency by adding capacity to the leadership team. The next key recommendation was improving consultant management. The study evaluated our use of consultants as compared to similar agencies. It recommended that training, clear expectations, and best practices be developed to help guide staff in the management of their consultants, such as better oversight, accountability, ownership, and annual performance reviews. It was also recommended that a portal be developed to better manage contracts and consultants. Our contracts manager is currently developing a contracts management portal to meet this goal. This study further recommended developing an annual staffing plan to ensure a balanced approach for job duties performed in-house by CCTA staff versus consultants. The staffing plan would allow us to maximize our in-house resources and ensure we have the right staff and skills in place to conduct these duties. We are currently in the process of starting the development of a staffing plan. The next recommendation focuses on the evaluation of CCTA 4.0. Based on the direction CCTA wants to go, The study recommended developing a communications and engagement strategy to advance CCTA 4.0. This initiative needs to garner support and understanding with both internal and external stakeholders. It was also recommended that a strategy and staffing plan for CCTA 4.0 be developed to ensure we have the right approach and staffing in place to meet the future needs and challenges that this initiative may bring. Currently, the strategic plan is underway. The next steps include completing the total compensation study and the next 3-year total compensation plan, which expires on June 30th, and includes the publicly available pay schedule. The recommendations from this study are being evaluated in the total compensation study. It will include the recommended new classifications, title reclassifications, and evaluation of FTEs to allow for development of job descriptions and salary and benefits benchmarking to ensure they align with CCTA's proposed organizational structure. Any recommendations will be brought back for board approval, as well as adoption of a publicly available pay schedule with the total compensation study. Currently, the recommendations propose 2 additional FTEs, one for the Deputy of Planning, Programs and Policy, and one for the Communications Specialist, which would bring CCTA to a proposed total of 27 FTEs. The addition of an FTE for the Administrative Services Manager is also being evaluated. We have provided this information to Gallagher as they are currently working on the total compensation study. We met with the Salary and Benefits Ad Hoc Committee earlier today to discuss the recommendations and plan to present the findings at the board meeting in June. Staff will also evaluate the budget and ensure we have funding for any requests for additional FTEs. In conclusion, the proposed recommendations in the study will realign CCTA's structure to meet future goals, priorities, and initiatives. Introducing new classifications will improve operational efficiency and functionality, facilitate staff growth, and ensure succession planning. It will prepare CCTA for future challenges and opportunities. We will be shovel-ready, as they like to say in projects terms. Staff seeks authority board acceptance of the recommendations and draft implementation action plan. As part of the recommendations today, we are not asking for approval of the FTEs, as they will be evaluated and considered with the recommendations from the total compensation study. That concludes my presentation, and both Tim and I are available to respond to questions.
Terry Ann, thank you. As usual, you are so precise. Your thoughtfulness in looking at this on our own, it has a different perspective until you actually go through it and describe it. So just to all of us, high-level view, the request, and this is an action item, is to add the 2 FTEs. The 9 classifications, 2 of those are reclassifying existing positions to move them up to expand their scope of work. The other 7 are the future, which are really dependent upon a long list of things. So all the request is to approve the classification only. And those are dependent upon the outcomes of Innovate 680 and whether or not this agency ends up the business of providing the technology support and running that. It could be Caltrans, it could be somebody else. But to make sure that we're poised, the idea was to study this and see, can we do it? How would it work? What might it look like? And also, it's a little bit related to whether or not we do an extension and of our service. Tim, did you want to add anything? Go to questions? Okay, so questions and comments. Sue?
Did you just see my finger going?
I did.
Yeah.
And I know who you are. So.
So yeah, I'm on the new proposed classifications piece. So we're not approving FTEs for these. We're just, but are these classifications created that people can get moved into?
They could be, you're right.
So
That wasn't
that's what I want to be clear about. People can be moved into these without a new FTE.
Correct.
And
if
so-
that position needs, we can immediately say we already have the position, and let's say we needed one person to take over the technology because we don't have anybody, but yes, we could do that.
So, yeah, so that's.
No positions.
That was part of my question. So a lot of this, I think, is going to be driven by the total compensation study as well, because we've got that 1% cap, right? We're, what, 0.68? I don't know, that number comes
Just
to
on
my
point
mind.
six,
but-
point six.
0.6. So, you know, adding 2 FTEs, one fairly senior FTE, and then these classifications, I assume, are sort of step up, as you talked about, which is great. But, you know, I think we have to also keep an eye on how that works with our caps from a budget perspective. So I think we just have to be careful about that as we do these classifications, which I don't disagree with any of them. I just say we need to be careful about causing, you know, creating these career paths for people, putting them in, and all of a sudden we're in a position where we can't backfill because we've got financial constraints. So that was my only
Good
comment
point.
about that.
And just to share a little bit, because Chris and I we were in that committee meeting today, we did make a recommendation, so it'll come to our June meeting. And just to give you a highlight of it, the total compensation survey is about 3.2% adjustment. So it's not a big number. We have already anticipated those other 2 staff members for over a year, so that's being built into our budget, and we are still well below our 1% limit. Yes, we have a lot of room in there, but that's just to give you a heads up. That will come. Other questions, comments?
I was just
Scott?
going to ask if we could see some budget-oriented, along with this. I don't see that the study looked at our organization and how we operate and things we're trying to accomplish, but it doesn't appear that it had a view of what the budget would be that would support that. So ultimately, we need to look at the budget that goes with it.
Yes, and we will have that at our June meeting. We'll have not only our annual budget proposed, we will have those specific breakouts and that recommendation. I was just giving you a little highlight of what we're going to see. So, yeah, good questions. Renata?
You answered my question, but I did have a comment, and there's a couple things that really stood out for me. And Terry Ann, fantastic job, way to reduce to its essence a lot of stuff, and we really appreciate it. The emphasis on communication internally and collaboration internally, and I like the moves of the creating an executive team and having these deputy executive directors, because I think especially as the organization is moving into 4.0 and as we are sort of pivoting, it is critically important that the communication internally be consistent, be clear, and that there be no vacuums, because nothing loves a vacuum like confusion and misinformation. So I think that's great. The other thing, and our communication externally is only as good as what is occurring internally. So I really like those recommendations. And I also think that, I mean, our staff is fantastic. And so to the extent these improvements provide some more opportunities for professional development, growth, and advancement, I think that's a very, very worthy goal. So thank you.
Great. And, you know, that just reminded me of one thing to mention. You know, for those of you that are a little newer on it, we have a policy, by the way, and you'll see it in the salary survey. It just doesn't come up very often, but it's our existing policy that we made a decision, given the nature of the work and how few employees we have in relation to the amount of work that we accomplish, that we've set a policy and an in-house standard that we want to be the agency of choice, and that our salaries are not only competitive, that we have a 10% plus in there. It's the only way to a small agency we can attract, and you can see by the quality of the people. Just for those of you who've been here for a while, that's been a policy we've had actually since Randy Iwasaki got here. It was a big change, and it's made a huge impact. So, any other comments, questions? Yeah, Ken.
Without saying ditto. No, I find myself totally in alignment with the comments that were made. The only request I would make is the next proposal, as we look at this again, is that full-on organizational chart with every proposed position in there and how they're layered, who they're reporting to, just so you have a visual picture of those reports and those positions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you refer to the APC packet, that was the original, what is it, attachment A, I think it was. So we had given like a structural view instead of a org chart of the actual FTEs. So with this, we did revise and update that, so I can send that to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, we kind of left it out because in some way, until you understand the other part, it made that look complicated, so, yeah, but
I
you're
was
right.
just scrolling back and forth going,
Yep.
Planning, programming,
Yep.
operations, where we're
Absolutely
going,
right.
and I just,
Cool.
yeah,
We'll do that.
I didn't get that.
Okay. All right, so we will, seeing no further comments or questions from the board, we'll go to public comments. Is there anybody here in the room who'd like to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, Terry Ann, is there anybody written or online?
I've received no written or verbal public comment.
Okay, the item's back before the board for action.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further comments? Seeing none, Terry Ann, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Carlson,
Aye.
Commissioner Haskew,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Meadows,
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes?
Commissioner Perkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce,
Yes.
Commissioner Xavier,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hernandez Thorpe,
Aye.
Chair Arnrich.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Glover absent.
Excellent. Terry Ann, again, thank you from all of us, and Tim, all of you. I know there was a lot of work that's been going in on this, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. This will now take us to item number 9A. This is a planning committee, regular agenda items, and this is the approval to distribute the draft Measure J calendar years 2022 and 2023 growth management program compliance checklist for the allocation of the fiscal year 23-24 and 24-25 local street maintenance and improvement funds. And welcome, Matt. It's all yours.
Thank you, Chair Arnrich. That's a mouthful. Matt Kelly, Senior Transportation Planner with the Authority. As most of you know, because you sit on local agency boards, each jurisdiction in the county needs to submit its Measure J Growth Management Program checklist. However, you may not fully understand all that goes into preparing a checklist. And so, since we have a lot of new members on the board, we decided to just kind of do a refresher on the growth management program and what the checklist is asking for, what is required from you all, and what your staff is working on behind the scenes. So I'll try and move through this relatively quickly. So first of all, what is the growth management program? Well, it was originally established under Measure C. It was a very popular component of CCTA and the measure, and it was strengthened under Measure J. And a lot of people point to the growth management program as one of the reasons why Measure J was so successful at the ballot box. So the growth management program assures that new development pays for itself, basically pays for the facilities required to meet the demands resulting from that new growth. It requires that transportation and land use decisions are cooperative and coordinated amongst local jurisdictions. That's what happens at the RTPCs. We put neighboring cities in a room together and ask them to talk about their projects and how it affects their upstream and downstream neighbors. And the GMP supports land use patterns that make more efficient use of the existing transportation system and consistent with local general plans. And really, it supports infill development and redevelopment in existing urban areas and brownfield areas, avoiding those important greenfields and agricultural lands, especially in East County. Going the wrong way. Okay, what is the GMP checklist? Well, it is the mechanism for determining each local agency's compliance with the GMP itself. It is submitted by the 19 cities and towns and the county biennially, in other words, every 2 years. and is presented by local staff to the Citizens Advisory Committee. Each checklist season is open for about 13 months. There's a submittal window that usually lasts from about June 1st of the even year to the end of June of the odd year. So it gives your jurisdictions a fair amount of time to figure out what needs to go into their checklist to put it together and to submit to CCTA. So the Citizens Advisory Committee determines the status of compliance with the Growth Management Program and then recommends transmittal of local streets and roads maintenance funds back to the cities. So when a checklist goes in front of the CAC, they then recommend to you, the board, to release 2 years of that return to source funds. In most cases, it's 18%. In some cases, there's an additional 2.09% added on to that. In this case, the checklist approval for the current checklist will release fiscal year 2023 and 24, and 2024 and 25. And we transmit those funds a year apart. So when the checklist is approved, you get the first year. A year from that day, you get the second year funds. The last checklist, which was completed last June, allocated $46.3 million to local jurisdictions for those 2 fiscal years listed below. So a lot of money is returned to the local agencies through the checklist. So what is required, what must be included in the checklist to demonstrate compliance with the GMP? First item on the checklist is the action plan. So really what it's asking is, has the jurisdiction implemented actions on their routes of regional significance in the locally adopted action plan? So in each of the 5 action plans, there's a bunch of actions that have been identified to meet the goals of each route of regional significance. So really we want to know, what has the jurisdiction done in the last 2 years to implement those actions? Have they been circulating environmental documents to their neighboring jurisdictions as required, as required through the action plan and RTPC circulation process? Has the jurisdiction analyzed the impacts of GPAs, general plan amendments? So anytime, there's a major addition to the general plan in terms of housing or commercial development, has that been analyzed? Have approved projects, have they approved projects consistent with the local action plan? So there's a bunch of projects identified in there. Have those been approved or implemented? And has the RTPC followed the growth general plan amendment review procedure? And we spell out all these procedures in our GMP documents. So item 2, development mitigation program. Has the jurisdiction adopted and implemented a local development mitigation program that's intended to pay its fair share of impact costs from that development? And every jurisdiction is required to have a local fee program for development. So all of you do have a fee program in place, and you're all required to adopt and implement a sub-regional transportation mitigation program. A lot of, mostly referred to as a STIMP, a sub-regional transportation mitigation program. Each of the RTPCs have a fee program that local development pays into. So each local development is actually paying into 2 fee programs as required by Measure J. Housing options, it's also called, and job opportunities, but we really that's kind of a leftover from Measure C. We really focus on housing on this item. And really what we're asking for here is to, how has the city made progress on meeting opportunities for all income levels in its housing elements? And basically what we're asking for is proof of your compliance with HCD. We're not asking for anything above and beyond what you're already doing. You're already doing, complying with RENA, zoning for the RENA allocations, and then submitting, your annual progress reports to HCD. All we want to do is see a copy of the 2 applicable housing progress reports. just to prove that you are in compliance with HCD law. And is the jurisdiction addressing how new housing development will affect the transportation system in its general plan? So looking at, is the general plan build out looking, is the circulation element looking at how the general plan build out will affect transportation? And then also in the circulation element, have policies been adopted into the development approval process that support transit, biking, and walking access? So when a new neighborhood is created as part of a development, are there requirements for putting in facilities for all modes? And then when you do have a new development, has the jurisdiction conducted traffic impact studies for projects? And this is really for projects that are generating a kind of a minimum threshold. And in most parts of the county, that is 100 net new peak hour trips. Some parts of the county have higher thresholds. That's an option under the GMP, and that is codified in each action plan. Item 5 is participation in cooperative multi-jurisdictional planning. That is your RTPC. So really, you're just acknowledging that staff is regularly participating in the RTPC TAC, and that elected officials are participating in the board meetings, that staff worked with the RTPC to develop and implement the action plans, that the authority's travel demand model was used to analyze all of those changes to the general plan and new developments exceeding the thresholds, and then provided that information back to the authority so we can put it into the travel demand model for future analysis, countywide analysis. Oops, wrong direction. Item 6, has the jurisdiction adopted a 5-year capital improvement program? And you all do that every year generally, and so really we just ask that you submit the transportation component of the CIP, and that is so we can get a handle on what projects may be in the pipeline. Checklist item 7, Transportation Systems Management Program. Most people know this as Transportation Demand Management Programs. When Measure J was written back in 2004, it was mostly referred to as TSM, but now it's more commonly referred to as TDM. So really, we're asking that, to verify that your jurisdiction has adopted a TDM ordinance or resolution that promotes carpools, van pools, park and rides, and alternatives to the single occupant vehicle. And you all have done that, and you all did that ahead of Measure J's implementation in 2009. If you update it, we ask you to submit a new version. Checklist item 8, probably the most well-known component of the growth management program. It's the urban limit line, and really we're just asking here, have you adopted and continually complied with a voter-approved urban limit line? Once again, all jurisdictions and the county did that ahead of Measure J coming online in 2009, but really we want to know if you've made any changes since then, and then have you made findings of consistency with the ULL policy. Anytime developments have come in front of you, your jurisdiction, that may require changes to the ULL. And so generally, the answer to that is no. We haven't had any major changes to the ULL in some time. Item 9, adoption of the Measure J GME, the growth management element. As part of Measure J, a growth management element was developed. We developed a template, and it was all jurisdictions are required to have a growth management element in their general plan. They can use our template or not, but once again, all jurisdictions are in compliance with this item. So there's generally 3 items that don't require much work from your staff, just kind of acknowledging that you have continuously complied with these things that have been on file for over a decade. Item 10, posting of signs. We want the public to know when their taxpayer funds are being expended on a project. And I guess the best way of doing that is to put a sign on the side of the road. So I've shown a blast from the past, the Caldecott Tunnel fourth bore sign. You want to make it obvious who's paying for these projects. So that's what we're asking for here. If a project has received more than $250,000 in funds, you need to post a sign. And so we just ask that you list the projects that signs were posted for. And I've also started asking for pictures, just because it's an easy way for the CAC to, understand that this item has been fulfilled. Item 11, maintenance of effort. This is something that goes all the way back to Measure C. What we wanted to know when we established the return to source funding is that you weren't going to replace all of your existing maintenance funds and efforts with the return to source funds under Measure J. So whatever you were doing before Measure J, we want you to continue doing, and then use the return to source funds from Measure J as additional maintenance funds. Or, they're very flexible transportation funds, so you don't really need to use them just on roadway maintenance. They can be used on a variety of things. So really what you're reporting is your MOE minimum, which was established back before Measure J, based on the average of what you were spending at that time. We looked at your expenditures over several years before Measure J. What was your baseline average? And that became, the threshold that we compare against. So really, you just need to report the 2 years of non-Measure J expenditures on maintenance against your minimum or your requirement. So it's a pretty easy requirement to fulfill. It just takes some some financial tracking from usually the engineering or public works and finance department. And then the last item, submittal of local streets and roads reporting forms. So, when you get that return to source funds into the city, what are you spending it on? And there's a summary form where it's broken into 5 general categories: local streets and roads, growth management, transit capital and operations, trails, parking facilities, and TDM. Sorry, that's 6. And so we just ask you to report how you spent it in each of those categories. And then for each individual item over $10,000, we want to know exactly what that was spent on. Did you put in ADA curb cuts? If so, how many? How many square feet of pavement overlays were done? How many linear feet of sidewalk were installed? So things like that. And that's how we can, be transparent to the public and let the public know how you and we are spending Measure J funds. So that is really the last item. There is another item. If you feel you've gone above and beyond, or there's something else that needs to be reported by the city, they can do that here. But otherwise, we really just wanted to let you know what's going into the checklist, that your staff really is spending a lot of time on this. I tell folks at cities, especially new staff, that it takes a village. It takes finance, public works, planning, housing, and engineering to put together a checklist. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes going on into this, but it brings in a lot of money back to the city. So we aren't recommending any changes to the current checklist requirements as part of the new cycle. Our recommendation is to release calendar years 2022 and 2023 checklist to allow all the local jurisdictions to submit for determination of compliance, and that all-important LSM allocation for the 2 fiscal years listed, and to actively encourage early submittal of checklists through outreach and staff assistance. We end up sitting on a lot of cash for a long time because checklists get submitted at the very end of that year-long cycle. We'd rather have them in the first 3 months of the cycle. It also helps us manage our Citizens Advisory Committee meetings because they have to receive these presentations, and we can only fit in, usually 2 per meeting. So early submittal really helps us out with our workload and gets you your money faster. So that is my presentation. I can take any questions.
Great, Matt. Thank you for that. I was just going to add a high-level view that when Measure J started, the return to source money, important component of getting support from all the cities, was about $11 million a year that was divided up, and along with the county. That's about $22 million a year now. And what Matt was saying, our staffs are really good at doing this. It took them a while to get up to it, but they were doing something similar in Measure C. But the last point Matt made is, as the elected sitting on our boards, hold your staff accountable because it's delaying your own projects that you're approving. And this is something they've done so many times and so repetitively. It's really an update. Hard to do the first one after that. It's a lot easier. So, questions from or comments? Start with Sue and then Chris.
So when I was going through this, is there at any point in time, some of the new laws happening in Sacramento seem to come close to maybe being in conflict with some of what's required in the checklist? Is there enough flexibility in the checklist and the GMP in Measure J to be able to adjust that based on the requirements that might be coming out of HCD or the state regarding parking and transit and some of those things? I can see where we might have some conflicts at times.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the last time we made a change based on a state policy was in 2020 with the transition away from level of service to vehicle miles traveled. And that was simply because the growth management program required use of level of service in all transportation analysis. So we added VMT into that in addition to LOS. As far as future changes, we don't like to make changes to the GMP too often because it generally means more work for the locals. However, generally whenever we get to a expenditure plan discussion, that's when we start talking about adding new requirements. So, you can add new requirements at any time, but generally it's to address some change in state law or something that's, like you said, in conflict with the GMP. But they can be changed at any time based on a vote of this body.
Okay.
So on that specific issue, the bottom line purposes of this is to show the public where our return to source money is supposed to go to roads and maintenance and transportation related things. That's all this is about. So all the other things, we made those decisions a long time ago, all of the impact fees and things, and we all have our own responsibilities. If those impacts are greater, we do a new nexus study and things like that. That we, as the agency sitting here, we don't force you to do that. That's up to you, but you must have those minimums. So it really is just about demonstrating that you've used the money in the appropriate place. So.
Can I just chime in really quick, Chair Unrich? Just 3 things, and one of them is actually related to your comment, Commissioner Nowak. The 3 things. One is I think we tend to forget that this program is really important in Measure J. I know it seems it can come off as very administrative, but it's actually an extremely important policy. In fact, it was first developed in Measure C. It was further strengthened in Measure J, and really the first of its kind in the state of California, maybe even in the country, where it ties land use and transportation and actually ties funding to it. A lot of counties will have a growth management program, but really not a whole lot of strengthening in terms of, requiring and tying funding to the growth management program. And so I think that's a really important element of the growth management program is this concept of, if you want to get your return to source, you have to kind of follow this growth management policy. You have to follow the growth management, goals and objectives set by CCTA and by the region, and we're seeing more and more examples of that. Like, for example, the transit-oriented community policy That's coming down the pipeline for OBAG 4. So I think there's definitely this focus of, how can we leverage funding to better meet and fill the gaps in transportation and land use. So that's kind of one important thing that we need to think about as part of this policy. The second thing is, to your point, Commissioner Nowak, as part of the countywide transportation plan and the update to the CTP, we're going to be looking at how to potentially modernize the growth management program and start kind of building the foundation of what that might look like, in a future, expenditure plan. And we'll obviously bring all that to the authority board as we start. Because I think that we had, if you all may recall, we had a really good conversation at the last board workshop about this in terms of really kind of modernizing it from the standpoint of, how do we continue to leverage the program to really address ARENA and affordable housing and all these other new state policies that are coming out, and I know we did a really good job of, addressing VMT through the VMT task force, GMP task force that Matt mentioned in 2020, but I think we need to kind of take it a step further and start thinking about how to really modernize it to really support a lot of the concerns. I mean, we already heard some of the comments tonight about how are we addressing traffic impacts from all these ARENA goals, and the growth management program is the answer behind that. That's the answer. And so that's something we need to think about in terms of how we're going to modernize the GMP. And then third, knowing that this can be somewhat administratively intense, I just want to give kudos to the planning team because about 2 years ago, you digitized everything, right? Mm-hmm. So before, everything was paper. So 2 years ago, they digitized the entire GMP checklist to make it easier for city staff to complete their checklist. And I think it actually carries over the previous submittal. Is that correct? Right? So it carries over the previous data so they can just go through and check that it's all consistent from a previous submittal, or just all they got to do is focus on what has changed and try to streamline the process as much as possible to make it easier for all of the cities, to submit their checklists, and so I just want to kind of really put a kudos out there for the planning team because I think we're as much as this is administratively kind of intense, we're being thoughtful about your time and the city's time in terms of how we're preparing these checklists.
Thank you, Tim. I'm just going to add one quick thing on that. What we always want to be careful was, in order to get the measure passed, the return to source was fundamental, that without it, it would not pass. Not one city, nor the county would support it. So we want to be careful that we are, particularly in spirit, and all the major issues, the urban limit line, the impact fees, the nexus studies showing traffic impacts. And again, the real purpose is to make sure that your return to source is going to transportation improvements and or maintenance. If we make it too hard, then the equity issue goes away where some city may be out of compliance because we created rules that, and again, there's a big difference between small cities and large cities, that we just want to be cautious about that. And in the spirit of staying within the concept of what its purpose is. I saw somebody, Ken, and then.
Yeah, I don't want to interpret what Sue Nowak was saying, but, some of the early genesis of this came out of our no growth history, right? Yes. And so as we're planning, and now we're facing the consequences of that with our RENA numbers and HCD and what's coming out of Sacramento, and I think that's kind of where you're going is keeping our eye on that and managing our policy and our work in relation to the balance we're trying to do in meeting those demands and protecting our urban limit line and managing our growth in such a way that we're doing it right. And so that's where I too, every time, some development change comes up, a general plan comes up, we're fearful of how is Sacramento going to force us in some way to impact the growth management that we're trying to do appropriately. And so, understanding that history and where we are today and then the work we're doing, I think is really important. And that's why I too am like, are we in alignment? Are we protecting ourselves in that sense?
Renata?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chair, Matt, thanks for that presentation. I mean, I think it really illustrated the point Newell was making, that this is a very important process and a very important exercise. It's not a check-the-box kind of exercise. So I think we do bring that back to our staffs, who I know take this very seriously, and I think do a very good job. But one of the other things your presentation reminded me of is that it's the Citizens Advisory Committee that reviews all this. And so that is a very heavy lift for them. And I just want to do a shout out to our Citizens Advisory Committee for doing this work, as well as all the other important stuff they're doing. But this is particularly critical to the whole funding process and the planning process. So thanks to all. And I think as we're recruiting folks from our jurisdictions to serve on that committee, this is an important point to remember, that this is one of their roles.
I appreciate that. I'll pass the word along at their meeting next week.
Yeah, really good point. Any further questions or comments? Yes, Chris.
Matt, thank you, and thank you for digitizing the checklist. I know that my Public Works Director will appreciate that. So for these next checklists, when are they due by, and when would you recommend them being submitted?
So here are the particulars. The new checklist, which we will make available in the next few weeks, will be due June 31st of 2025.
Okay.
The money will be available for the first fiscal year as of September 1st of 2024. So I would encourage you to submit prior to September, so that when the money is available, it rolls right over to your jurisdiction, or any time after that. I mean, any time this calendar year would really set us up for, getting through all the checklists, even if they come, some of them come in right at the very end. This past year, we received 15 of the 20 after April. So in the last 3 months, we received 3/4 of the checklist.
Well, I appreciate that, so I can light a fire under my Public Works Director and say, hey, we got to get it submitted.
And it's digital.
Yeah, sooner rather than later, so thank you very much.
And staff here will walk your staff through it. If you have new staff, we will walk you through every step of it.
Great, thank you.
Good point. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Chris. Any further comments? Seeing none. Is there anybody here physically who would like to make public comments on this item? Seeing none, Terry-Ann, is there any written or online comments?
No public comment, written or verbal.
Okay, great, thank you. So we'll bring the item back for action by the commission. Somebody like to make a motion?
Yeah, I move that the staff seeks, that this is approved.
Second.
It's clear. Little, yeah. And the second?
Second.
The second, wow. Okay. Moved by Luella Haskew, seconded by Sue Nowak. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Terry-Ann, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew?
Yes?
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes?
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce?
Yes.
Commissioner Xavier?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hernandez-Thorpe?
Aye.
Chair Arnrich?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Glover absent.
Great, thank you, Matt, and thank you for a great presentation. All right, this will take us to our last regular item. This is item 9B, and this is the approval of the Transportation Fund for Clean Air, TFCA, that we mentioned earlier, 40% fund policy. And Ying Smith will be making the presentation. Welcome, Ying.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. And we are here again. You actually have heard this item. This was continued from last month. And I would like to just point out that in your packet, there is a staff report as well as the resolution with the draft proposed policy, TFCA policy. And this evening, I have a very, very brief presentation. I want to just highlight some of the key items and really want to set the stage to support your discussion and your input for this policy. and want to just first highlight what we do today with the TSCA, the Transportation Fund for Clean Air 40% fund. And currently, the authority board doesn't have a policy to guide the allocation of the TFCA funds. And we have been doing just based on past practice, and we haven't really changed our practice from since the beginning. So what we do is to calculate the fund distribution by a job housing formula for the to the 4 subregions, and those are the 4 of them. And we allocate the funds to the RTPCs, so for them to develop the programs. With very few exceptions, the RTPCs use the funds for transportation demand management activities. They tend to combine the Measure J Program 17 Commute Alternative Funds to support the TDM activities. They may use the fund for the program expenses, staff time, and in some cases, the overhead costs, as long as the amounts are under the cost effectiveness threshold that's established by the air district. And here, I think also important to show people what they actually do, the so-called activities. And they're in overall the 2 general categories: the countywide activities that are available to all residents and commuters in the entire county, and the sub-regional programs that are available only to those sub-regions, and they are managed by individually. Currently, our 3 offices, the 511 Contra Costa office that's managed by CCTA and SWAT and WICTAC, they implement countywide programs, but how it's paid for is only coming out from that office. It's not necessarily distributed across the county. And we have some questions about how we measure the program success. We established some key performance indicators. They are actually available on the authority board's website and the dashboard. I just want to show you some of them. The numbers, we track them over the years. The only drawback is we may not have a really good data source for some of the programs. It's harder for us to measure the effectiveness. We may be able to count how many people participate, but we may not know whether those programs are effective in terms of converting the automobile trips to other modes, and in turn, in measure of vehicle miles travel reduction. And this is the key, like what you didn't see last month, how in a different way to present it. We have received some questions about what is the difference? How is this new policy going to change the process? And I want to just show you over 2 slides. This is how we do it in terms of fund allocation, as well as the project selection process in these 5 steps. The 5 steps stays the same, it's just the details are different. The first step, CCTA staff will calculate the fund allocation to the 4 subregions using the job housing formula. And will inform the RTPC staff of how much will be available to them. And they would develop the projects based on the budget available. And as required by the TFCA guidelines, the project sponsors need to calculate the cost-effective ratio to make sure their projects go under the threshold. And when they submit those projects to CCTA, we evaluate the projects for completeness and also conformance with the TFCA program guidance. Currently, our review is pretty much hands-off. We pretty much take it for make sure everything like kind of checks the box. Then the next step is for the authority board to approve the projects, and we submit the projects to the air district. Under the new policy, the 5 steps remains the same, and but the next one, I want to show you some of the changes in the details. So the first step is very similar. What we calculate is the benefits. This is the new terminology we introduced under the policy, is to ensure geographic equity. We want to make sure each subregion is receiving its share of the benefit, calculated as the benefit from the countywide projects plus the subregional share, so the subregional projects. And with the policy's approval and after we have the fund calculation, we do a call for project. This is a new element that we introduce. Under the call for project, all eligible agencies may submit projects in step 2. In the policies, we provide some clear definitions on the eligible project types as well as eligible fund recipients. This is one of the strengths of the policy. It's very transparent on what projects are eligible and who are eligible to submit projects. The policy also encourages both better data quality as well as the performance based in project evaluation. And as the project sponsors prepare their projects, we do ask them to identify whether this is a countywide project or a sub-regional project. And we, as I mentioned, we do have these 2 categories. Under the new policy, the countywide projects will be so-called taken off the top. That is the way for us to fund the projects to distribute the funding responsibility accurately. And in step 3, the project evaluation will be done in collaboration between CCTA and RTPCs. This is another a new element. Would really allow quite a bit of time in this process. We know it's probably take a few rounds for us to really come to some agreement and consensus, because we have to first identify the countywide projects and establish the funding line. And we believe this is a give and take. There will be quite a bit of discussion going on. And in this process, the group can also review the data collection methodology and really establish some performance measures to really make sure the best projects flow to the top. And as I mentioned, at the end, each sub-region will receive the benefits according to the allocation formula. So after the project evaluation step, the RTPCs will approve the sub-regional projects. So this is, again, a new element in the policy. And it does strengthen the RTPC's role in this, the TFCA process. So the next 2 steps are the same as today's practice. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Ying, thank you so much, and I appreciate this is really clear, much clearer. Thank you for that. Questions or comments on this, Ken?
So, sorry, we just had at Air District today and Policy Grants Technology our policy updates and recommendations to the board. So I'm just curious how our action will impact what we do and will we have to readjust. So, we made minor adjustments to Policy 23, Policy 8, and Policy 32. Policy 8 is, we had a 24-hour window for projects to commence because of COVID. Now we're talking about reverting that back to the 12 months. So is that going to be a conflict or an issue for us? I had a little challenge with that simply because of planning and other things that might come forward. 12 months seems short, but we can approve extensions. And then the other one was 32, which allows for infrastructure projects on bike lanes to include buffered bike lanes and a little broader work in there. And then the final one that we moved forward to the board was the evaluation criteria for these projects to be along the lines of AB 617 communities, SB 550 communities, and AB 1550 communities. So we're impacting those that are most impacted by particulate matter and the other things the Air District's concerned about, as well as income-related communities. So are those changes going to ultimately impact where we are?
Thank you for the update and the question. A few points. First of all, whether the policy changes adopted by the Air District Board will affect what you're doing today, no, because we're following the so-called fiscal year ending, which is ending 25 to 25, which is equivalent of a fiscal year 24-25. And then to expand on that, that's one of the reasons staff is bringing a policy to you and to also have this annual update, review and update process, because what the air districts may change, that makes us to review our policy. In the past, since we haven't really looked at it on an annual basis, we are in sync, But if we don't have this process, we could be out of sync. For example, one of the requirements on outreach and information engagement from the disadvantaged community or highly impact communities. That's something we start to have some language in the new policy, but we're ready to update that when that comes for the next fiscal year.
So answer is yes, but next year. Yeah, thank you, Ying, thank you, Ken. Any other questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry. I see you, but I don't see that. Sue?
Oh, sorry. All that waving around, I messed that up. So going to your point on your last point on the changes for communities with more particular matter, will that impact how this is currently distributed sort of sub-regionally on a jobs housing formula versus an equity formula based on those impacted more by air quality issues?
No.
Okay.
No, it's really just evaluation criteria. So it would, yes, we want to prioritize impacted communities more, but it doesn't override everything we do. That's a half yes, half no.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm not sure I got a straight answer on that one, but that's right.
I think
It won't be the first, won't be the
It's
last.
an evaluation guideline, so.
What I heard is they're going to ask for it, and supposedly, if your project moves it more towards to solve that, you're gonna get a little higher rating, is what I'm hearing.
But then, to the extent that our program has this geographic equity, that could end up changing that, because we could have areas that get projects approved and others that don't because they don't have those environments. So then that geographic equity goes away.
Well, every one of our regions has some impacted community, even our South County, even Central County, East County, all of them have it. So it wouldn't affect the dispersal of the funds. It would be how we evaluate the project.
So speak, it sounds like that within, given that what you just said, Ken, within each of those areas, those projects on their own merit may rise higher within that RTCP area.
Right.
I'll hold off on that.
Yeah, no, we're all in all of that boat. Yes.
Well, just personally, as we're evaluating projects, I mean, who?
But if the Air District approves these 4 projects because they impact areas more so than other projects, then we could have a geographic inequity. True?
On the TFCA 60?
Yeah.
Or are we talking 40? Because the 40 falls in our lap, right?
So
we have
the
authority
40 that the air quality has no control over?
The 60 that's separate in the
Right.
sense of their evaluation criteria for their projects under
Okay.
TFCA 60.
But not under the 40.
The
Not under 40,
is
but if
ours.
you were to ask
We're
me
designated.
personally, I want to do our best to, one, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, right? So we want to look at, and that's part of the cost-effective analysis is, how many tons of greenhouse gas emissions are you getting out for the dollars you're spending? How many less vehicle miles traveled, or however we want to quantify or measure? But then also, are we boosting or supporting those that are heavily impacted communities, as well as those that are suffering from economic challenges?
So far, on the 40%, which is what we were talking about tonight, we have most of the control of that. But subject to what he's saying, we have to lobby him to make sure that we keep some.
That's a
There's
quasi-answer.
There's lots of
Yeah.
definitions.
It's not a well, it's not a specific policy within the Air District. It is in our evaluation criteria.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it's not policy,
It's got-
whatever,
Okay.
right?
Okay,
built-in
I'll go on
bias.
to my original question
Okay.
before Ken spoke, my other question, or other comment, I should say. So when you know, and thank you, Ying, I know you've been through this. How many times have I sat through this now? 4, I think. So I look at sort of the chart that you had on countywide, and then sub-regional. And really, except for sort of 2 programs, everything is countywide. Right? Even the sub-regional ones are all 4 RTPCs, except for the traffic school program and the Diablo Youth Bike Ped Safety, right? Everything else is all 4 RTPCs, pretty much, right? because countywide, sub-regional. Right? So, you know, and I think about our position on Transpac. CCTA runs it, and I said to our, you know, Transpac people, if they do a call for projects, do we have anybody that's going to come up with a project for our, you know, we haven't done this. We haven't had to come up with a project to propose through this process. And so I'm just curious with the amount of countywide projects that are currently there, how much is really going to be sub-regional, and is it going to be enough dollars to be very effective? And are we better pooling those funds and doing all countywide programs that are just effective for the county than sub-regional programs? I mean, I think the dollar amounts come down to, I think Central County comes down after countywide programs. Your pro forma was like 300,000 or something like that.
It is the four sub-regions are almost equally a quarter, a little bit more or less,
Right.
Central a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, but it was around about $300,000, I think, if I was correct. $200,000 to $300,000 was the range of dollars. And I'm just thinking, in order to have some effective programs, it's not a lot of money to have a real effective program. Are we better having more effective programs countywide than trying to do sub-regional programs? So it's just a food for thought comment. It's not a, now you're looking at me funny, what?
Well, this is bringing back memories of the
Oh, no.
Pleasantville Council Nowak Carlson hour.
Yeah.
No. What Sue's right, what it will do is, because of the evaluation criteria and the reporting we're asking, ultimately, down the road, it's going to create a sort of evaluation of each of these. Which ones are the most effective? Where should we? But at this point in time, it's still spread out a little bit. And eventually, we're going to get to that point, maybe the next cycle, where you're actually going to say, you know what? And it'll come to us to make that decision, that it looks like these are the best programs, so to speak, the biggest bang for our buck. I don't know that we're there yet, but we're getting close to it. So that these changes are helping, I think, move us towards that. Does that make sense?
Well, it was really not meant to, ask for an answer. It was really meant to
Okay,
be
it's rhetorical.
No, it was meant to be a food for thought. On, as we're going through this process, because from a Transpac perspective, they do a call for projects. We're not ready to propose a project. We'll be jumping on the countywide programs. So, I don't know about transplant or, so I just, anyway, it's just food for thought as we go forward with this.
Okay.
It's not such a massive amount of money
Right.
to do all this with, so.
Exactly. Okay. Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Ken, and Sue for that little debate. Is there anybody here in the room who'd like to make any public comments on this item?
We do have a public comment from Rashidi Barnes.
Oh,
I thought I saw him standing up. It was either that or he was heading out the
I
door.
thought he was heading out the door.
Rashidi, welcome.
Thank you.
Just as a reminder, since this is recorded and people are listening, please state your name and who you're with.
Rashidi Barnes, the CEO for Tri-Delta Transit. Thank you all for taking the time out to hear me out today. And to your point, Sue, Commissioner,
That's all right.
Tri-Delta Transit historically has not tried to tap into TFCA funds in the past. But now that things are changing, not only regionally, locally, but at the state level and federally, and we're building our relationship, strengthening our relationship with not only the county, but also 2CTA, funds like these will be able to support expansion of Try My Ride, maybe also DPMT in East County. We're also going to talk about a free student fare, for example, as well. Those are just examples, to your point earlier, about where we believe that some of these funds could go to support. $300,000 could put a lot of butts in the seats, excuse my language, when it comes to a free fare for students, for example. So we at Tri-Delta Transit wholeheartedly support this policy change, and we will continue to work with this body as well as our commissioners and our directors to make sure that, and Transplant, to make sure that the plans that we put forth meets the goals of TFCA as well as VMT reductions.
That's great. Rashidi, thank you for that. Good comments. And obviously, Transplant is your sort of gateway to start this, and we look forward to that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from anybody here in the room? Seeing none, Terry Ann, is there any comments online or written?
No further public comment.
Okay, the item's back before the commission. Is there a motion?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Okay, it's, I think it was moved by that team down there. What I heard, maybe it's my ears, but I did hear Sue Nowak first and Aaron Meadows second. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none.
I get to vote first, that's all.
Seeing none, Terry, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Carlson.
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew.
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly.
Aye.
Commissioner Meadows.
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak.
Yes?
Commissioner Perkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce.
Yes.
Commissioner Xavier.
Aye.
Vice Chair Hernandez-Thorpe.
Aye.
Chair Arnrich.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Glover absent.
Ying, thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
For putting up with us for so long. Okay, this takes us to item number 10, correspondence and communications. You have that in your packet, associated committee reports under line item number 11, A through D, and then authority board and staff comments, chair's comments and reports. I have none at this time. Commissioners or ex officio? Yes, Chris.
Yes, thank you. So you may all have, commissioners here, you may have received, and staff may have received a sign-up genius for our summer events. And I love the summer events. I have already signed up for 4 of them. Thank you, Emily Owen, you're wonderful. And the first one that I'm going to be at is the King of the County Barbecue and Music Festival in Martinez on Saturday, June 15th. Hey, yeah. So I had a great time last year, got to meet a lot of wonderful people, got to work with staff at the events. And so I would urge all my fellow commissioners to go in and to sign up. It's really great, and we get to know our residents out there and the people who use our services. So please sign up, and I'll keep bugging you.
There are some commissioners who have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, we sent out an email. Maybe, Terry Ann, you can say when that was and resend it to the rest of us?
And by who?
It came from me, and I will resend it to you.
Please, thank you.
Yeah, because you're not going, you don't go to spam, even though a lot of people do, but you don't.
Probably about a month.
I didn't say.
It was probably about a month ago.
Yeah, so send it out again. Yeah.
Before
Yes,
the
please.
first event in April, so.
Thank you.
I
Over
couldn't
a
make
month.
It was
those.
sent out
Thank
in
you.
April? Oh, yeah, I'm well, yeah, you're gonna have to resend that out, sorry. Yeah. Wow, okay.
April 25th from Terry Ann. It was called Community Event Series. Sign Up Genius. We have one
Great.
genius. We have one genius on the board here. Chris Kelly.
Who has trouble pronouncing it?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, Chris, thank you for that reminder. That was really good. Okay, and this will take us to any other? Oh,
Yes.
Scott?
Well, I wanted to thank the staff for supporting truck time in San Ramon in spite of the weather. We actually had quite a few families and kids show up on Saturday the 4th. I wasn't able to be there, but I understand it was a big hit, and thank you for supporting that. And thank you for having Redefining Mobility Summit in San Ramon.
Ninth year?
That went well as
Ninth year.
well, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Scott. And Sue Nowak.
So I don't have a lot to comment on MTC, because this SB 1031 is, nobody can seem to agree on MTC or any place what the end result is going to look like. There's a lot of discussion because of the return to source requirements, those agencies or entities that are opposing at this point because of the consolidation requirements. There's also some concern because there's been indications of limitations on the amount of revenue to be generated, which causes some limitations on return to source, which a lot of people at MTC think is very important in order to get a measure passed. So there is more questions than answers at this point. It's still working its way through the Senate. We have a meeting next Wednesday, the full board meeting. We had some discussion at Ledge, but and the question came up is when do we really decide whether we continue to sponsor the bill or not? Because it has sort of changed quite a bit from what we originally were looking at. So, I'll try to keep you abreast of things that are going on at MTC, but it's a bit messy right now. So, that's it.
That was short, considering how complicated and how much time you and
There was so
Federal
much.
put in. Thank you for the
It's
condensed
it's
version.
either a 3-hour discussion
Yeah,
or
all
it's
right.
going to be 5 seconds. So.
Thank you for that. Okay, great. And Ken Carlson.
Yeah, just real quick, again, to all the staff and everybody and Tim for redefining mobility. I apologize for not being able to stay through the whole day, but it was really amazing, and I'm sure it's a logistical nightmare putting those things together, and you guys did a great, great job. I'm really grateful.
Great, thank you, Ken. Seeing no further, we will go to our Executive Director comments.
Thank you, Commissioners and Chair Arnrich. Just a few updates. I'll keep this relatively short. So first order of business is I want to introduce our new staff employee here at CCTA. You may know who he is from the town of Danville, Andy Dillard. He's our new senior engineer, working on a lot of great projects. Contra Costa County residents. I think we also shortened his commute, which is great. And so I don't know if Andy, you want to come up and say a few words and just make sure everyone knows who you are in case they don't know who you are.
It's all about the vehicles miles traveled, right?
It's all about vehicle miles
We
traveled.
reduced
That's
them.
what we're
I am
doing.
Definitely reducing the VMT in Contra Costa. Thank you, Tim. Good evening, Chair Arnrich and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to join the CCTA team. I've always greatly admired the work that the staff does here in the commission. It's small and mighty, as we all know, and dynamic. So never thought back in the day I'd join this team, but here I am, and I really am appreciative of the opportunity. For those that don't know me, I was with the town of Danville for almost 28 years. Most of that was in the transportation division, and the last about 9 years I oversaw the transportation division with traffic operations, engineering, transportation planning and programs. I've worked with the Measure C and J programs and projects for many years, mostly in the South County. Worked with some of the staff here for many years, almost a couple decades, I think, on various initiatives. I'm really excited to be on the CCTA side of things. I've sat up there on the TCC and the Countywide Bike and Ped Advisory Committee over the years and various other task forces. So I'm really excited to join the team and to serve you and help make this county more mobile. Little personal things about me. I am a Martinez resident. My wife and I live in Martinez. So although I spent my career in South County, I do know my way around the central and west and east county a bit. So I'm really looking forward to diving into the projects up in this neck of the woods. And little deeper dive on the personal, my other interests, I'm a musician, and I actually play with your former Deputy Director of Planning on occasion, Mr. Engelman. So he's a musician also. So that's my other thing that I like to do. So thanks, and look forward to working with you.
Welcome, Andy. Thank you. I have to say, when we did his retirement kind of leaving, I said, I'm not going to miss him. I'm actually going to work with him. So, welcome, Andy.
All right, well, thank you, Andy. We're very excited to have you on board. And as you can tell, we continue to attract really good candidates, best and brightest here at CCTA. It was already kind of mentioned, but we have kicked off our community event series, and the Truck Time event was a huge success. There was over 1,000 visitors despite the weather. I don't know if you remember that Saturday, but it was dumping rain by the inch. And I really want to give a special thank to Kat and Jackie and Yuli for kind of holding down the fort in the rain and ponchos and everything. But despite the weather, they talked to over 300 people about CCTA. And so, and we do have, what's really exciting is I think we're kind of creating new ways to connect with the visitors. I think last year we did learn a lot about these community event series and how we can improve and how we can get better. And so I'm really excited for that. So the Redefining Mobility Summit was a huge success. As Director Johnson mentioned, we got about $1 million of earned media off of that single event. So that's what increased the 200,000 to just 1.2 million. And we did a really great job, I think, of attracting the media, including Vice Chair Hernandez Thorpe, that was able to participate in the event and also do the unveiling of the new glide car for Glideways. And I think that was a huge attraction to the event. And so we had 4 panels. We had 63 students attend the event. So we had our student showcase. And then we also had our fantastic demo zone with our partners, which everyone really enjoyed. And I did receive a lot of great feedback, even on social media, even up till today, a week later. I think we're still garnering a lot of industry and public attention on the Redefining Mobility Summit. So I'm excited for next year. Next year's our 10th anniversary, so we're going to be planning big next year. And so hopefully all of you can be able to attend. Lastly, I wanted to really just thank the staff again for all the great work that they're doing. It's grant season right now, and we have submitted a lot of grants in the last 2 months. Just to give you some highlights, we submitted the Congestion Relief Program for $25 million for the Co-opted Adaptive Ramp Metering Project along 680. We also submitted, is it 25 or 20 for CRP? 25, right? Yeah. And then for RAISE, we also submitted RAISE for the 684 interchange, phase 1, 2A, for another $25 million. And then we also submitted just last Friday the mega grant, and that was a huge lift between Stephanie and Hisham and the whole team to get that in. That's a huge grant for a $200 million ask for the Northbound Express Lanes project. And that particular program is meant to really fund projects that are difficult to fund with other programs. And so given the nature of the work and the structure of projects and also including the VMT mitigation, it's a very odd project given the funding programs available to us. And so it's a really good candidate. So we're excited for that. And then the other grant we submitted was actually for innovative financing with the Build America Bureau. And that was done to really support kind of the implementation of the integrated transit plan and the development of a network of shared mobility hubs across the entire county. And so we've been really busy. I think all of the notice of funding opportunities came all out at once. And I think they're trying to get the word out before the election in November in terms of funding. So we're hopefully expecting some good news, hopefully sometime right around September timeframe on some of these grant applications. Meanwhile, we've been gearing up on state funding grants. There's a number of grant opportunities coming out, and that we will also be focusing on State Route 4, 680 interchange, as well as Northbound Express Lane. So it's been quite busy and buzzing across the entire office to get these applications in and working with our consultants to do that. So thank you to all the staff and doing all that work and continuing to keep all the baseline work going. This is definitely peak above our daily workload when we're doing all these grants. And I think that really concludes my remarks tonight. So any questions or comments?
Tim, thank you. Questions or comments? I just want to echo that. I've seen the thousands of hours, particularly on the mega grant. I mean, there's a couple of thousand hours of labor to put those together. I mean, these are not, that's why most of us, the cities, we can't go after things like that. I mean, you need full-time people to do it. So well done to everybody. Great to see Andy, our new staff. Presentations tonight, we resolved a lot of great stuff. So with that, seeing no further business, meeting adjourned.